Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's ILTA webinar, What's New with iManage. I'm Marcia, and I'll be serving as your moderator. Our speakers today are Jim Moreo with Cornerstone.IT and Scott Dumore with iManage. And I want to thank Cornerstone for sponsoring today's webinar. Today's presentation will run about 60 minutes, and we ask that you submit all of your questions to the Q&A box. And if those are not answered during the presentation, they will be addressed at the end. Before we start, please know that we're recording today's webinar and we'll post a link to our website under recordings shortly after today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we ask that you take a few moments to complete the evaluation. And I'll now turn over the webinar to Jim.
Thanks, Marcia. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's presentation. I am Jim Moreo. I'm one of the principals and founders of Cornerstone.IT. We are a longtime ILTA partner and as well as a longtime iManage partner. This is as long as we've been in business, about 16 years. And this is actually I want to say it's the 6th or 7th year in a row we've been doing what's new with iManage. Usually we do an ILTA roadshow. So we're just wrapping up a 10-city roadshow and we close it out with this webinar. Cornerstone is a business solution provider to the legal industry, so we do a lot of iManage migrations, upgrades, implementations, etc. Marcia is going to put up a poll for us. Typically in a room, we'll ask people to raise their hand and tell us what document management system they're running today, whether they're on iManage on-prem or in the cloud, or if they're using another document management system or not. So if you guys could just fill out this questionnaire, it could give us an idea of what you guys are running today. If you are running iManage, what version, and as well as what products you're interested in hearing about. So I'll give you a second if you guys would fill that out. Scott Dumore, I'll let him introduce himself, but the agenda for today is going to be we'll talk about work 10 on the client side, the web interface, the integration with Word and Outlook. We'll also talk about Security Policy Manager and Threat Manager. I think those are the main topics, and we'll touch on Drive and Share as well. But if you have any questions, please put them into the question and answer panel, and I will monitor the Q&A panel while Scott's chatting. And if it's appropriate, I'll interject and ask him to answer the question. If I think he's going to be covering that later, I'll hold on to that question. And then, as Marcia said, please fill out those surveys at the end. I see a lot of folks some friendly names in there. So we got about 200 people on the webinar. So thanks again for all joining. And I think, Marcia, did I give enough time to answer the questions? Okay, good. So great. All right, so that's good. So on-prem, you got about 78% of you iManage on-prem, cloud customers, eDocs, WorldDocs, other. Okay, good. All right, so we'll use that as part of the presentation. Most people are running 9 or 10. Okay, good. Good, that was helpful. So with that, I will hand it over to Scott.
All right, thank you, Jim. And I do want to thank all of you for attending this today, and also a big thanks to our friends at ILTA as well as Cornerstone in general. We certainly at iManage appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So the focus of today's presentation, as Jim said, is going to be on the iManage work solution. And there's really 3 main components to the overall iManage solution. We're going to focus mostly on the first one today, which is focused around our core iManage work product, with focusing on traditional document and email management. As Jim said, we will be talking about some of our security products as well, Security Policy Manager and Threat Manager. We also have our artificial intelligence or RAVN components as well. We may or may not have time today, given the constraints, to talk about that, but if not, and if it's something you're interested in, we certainly would be happy to schedule a follow-on conversation with you directly around some of the exciting things we're doing in that area. So on to iManage Work 10. So what we're going to be, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you a little recap. Where are we today with our current release of work? We're going to do a demo, show you the product, and for those of you that may not have seen it or want a refresher. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our plans for 2019. What are we doing in the first half and the second half of 2019? What's coming down the road, and what can you look forward to in the work solution? So again, for those of you that may not be too familiar with iManage Work 10, I saw in the poll results there, we've got the majority of folks still on the 9X platform, which is pretty typical. iManage Work 10 completely reimagines the iManage Work solution. And the focus really is on user adoption. Ease of use, simplified user experience, really making the product work the way that that legal professionals work. These are all core themes that we centered around when we developed iManage Work 10.2, or I should say iManage Work in general, with 10.2 being the latest release. What you do find in the latest release of iManage Work 10.2 is all of these things. We've done some exciting things in the latest release, things like support for non-integrated applications. What we did was we introduced something called the iManage Work Agent, which runs on your desktop and actually provides a somewhat active integration with applications that you don't even have an actual API level integration with. So for example, let's say I open up a document in Notepad from iManage Work. When I close it, the iManage Work Agent will detect that and check it back in, things like that. Also some other things, cost recovery integration. That's something that we had way back in the olden days in the product. It kind of disappeared and you know, is back again now with iManage Work. Some interesting things that we've done around PDF management and our integration with Adobe, and many other things as well. One of the things that particularly excites me about iManage Work 10.2 is client-side email management. Now, there may be some of you in the audience saying, well, wait a minute, why would client-side email management excite you? Server-side email management has been what it's all been about. And so if you're not sure what I'm talking about, what I'm referring to is iManage pioneered the concept of server-side email management through what we called our iManage Work Communication Server for Exchange. Basically what it does is the communication server gives you the ability to asynchronously file emails using a server-side component that talks directly to your mailboxes on your Exchange server. And it's a great component. It allows you to do things like map Outlook folders directly into iManage and things like that. The issue with server-side email management is that when you move to the cloud, which many of our customers are doing, and more so are every quarter, being able to configure something like the communication server becomes challenging. It's also challenging from a security standpoint, particularly for corporate legal departments. So what we did was we took the functionality that has always been in the server-side email management component, and we now moved it to the client side through the iManage Work Agent. So you have all of the same asynchronous email management functionality that you have in server-side email filing with the communication server, now available client-side in 10.2. It's not mandatory. We still fully support server-side email management, but client-side email management does give you an exciting new option to provide the same functionality while at the same time eliminating one of the additional components in your infrastructure. One of the other things that we really focused on with 10.2 is what we call the ownership experience. This is for the IT folks in the audience. This is about making iManage easier to deploy and maintain on the desktop. And what that really centers around is our new auto update feature. I mentioned the iManage Work Agent. As part of the iManage Work Agent, we built in exactly that, an auto update feature, where you can simply get a notification on your desktop that there's a new version of the client available. The end user can go ahead and click a button and will automatically update their client. Now, what you may be saying is, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want my end users just willy-nilly updating their clients. That's okay. What we've also built in is a complete control structure where you can actually control what releases are available, when they're available, and you can control when the notifications actually go out to end users. All we're really doing is just making it easier for the IT folks as far as actually going hands-on and deploying it on the desktop. That's really what it's all about. And again, we'd be happy to share more with you on this, one-on-one. This is also fully documented in the admin guide for Work 10.2. We've also really focused on other platforms with iManage Work 10, and in 10.2 we continue this march. One of those is email management for Gmail. Now, if you're a law firm, this may not be something that's too relevant to you, but we do have a growing number of customers in other verticals that are gravitating toward Gmail and the G Suite in general as their main productivity suite. So being able to provide an integration with Gmail sort of rounds out our product profile. It gives you an additional option should you find yourself in a scenario where you need to be able to file Gmail into iManage. And I think it just really illustrates our commitment to the market and our willingness to sort of go outside of our typical box and provide solutions and touch points in areas that we typically haven't in the past. And along those same lines is our integration for the Mac. I'm a Mac user myself, have been for many years. I always admittedly felt a little bit left out since there was no native iManage components for the platform that I used. I always had to rely on virtual machines running Windows, which when you're a Mac user is a painful thing. And now we do have iManage Work 10 available on the Mac. So all of the integration with the Office applications, for example, is all there. It looks different on a Mac because a Mac is different and the integration points are different. But from a productivity standpoint, integration in Microsoft Office, as well as email management, both for Mac Mail and Microsoft Outlook for Mac, you have consistent functionality now natively on the Mac platform as you have in Windows. So what I'd like to do now, the next section of the presentation here is going to talk a little bit about the iManage roadmap and what's coming down the road. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick demonstration for you. Hopefully everybody is seeing my my demo screen. I trust that Jim will let me know if that's not the case. But what I want to do is just take you through a quick demo of Work 10. For those of you that have seen Work 10, this will be a nice refresher for you. And for those of you that may not have seen it, hopefully this will get you excited about where iManage is currently and where we're going. So this is it. This is iManage Work 10. When I first log in, as you can see, and as I mentioned in the presentation, it's a very simplified user experience. Okay, it's very different from the classic clients, desk side or file side, if that's something you used in the past. And the focus here is on recency, and that's what you see. When I come in, the first thing I see is my recent documents. I see things I worked on today, last week, farther back in time, and I can even focus that recency on different things. Right now I'm looking at my recent documents. Maybe I want a recent matter-centric view. So when I switch over to my recent matters, now what it's doing is it's going a level up, and it's just showing me the matters that I've worked on today, last week, farther back in time. In Work 10, I can even go up to a client-centric view. And again, I'm looking at the recent clients that I've done work for over the last 30 days. So what this focus...
Yeah, Scott, just a quick interruption. So this, for those who are asking about 10.3, this is 10.2, and Scott's going to talk a little bit about 10.3 as well.
That's correct. That's correct. We'll be talking about that in the roadmap section coming up next. Okay. So, you know, what this focus on recency is really about, it's about being able to pick up right where you left off and do it in the way that you want, whether you want a document-centric view, matter-centric view. The system allows me to pick up right where I left off, see things that I've been working on recently, and then we have filters that you can combine with something like the timeline view to easily narrow down what it is that you're looking at. So let's say that I only wanted to see documents that I had recently edited within the past month that are Word documents. With just a couple of clicks, I can narrow that down very, very quickly. Okay, so the filters here that you see on the left-hand side really give me the ability, similar to what you do on Amazon when you go shopping. You might have 250,000 results, but with just a few clicks, you can narrow things down very, very quickly. Searching is top and center, as I like to say in Work 10. Everywhere I go, I have the same search functionality available. If I wanted to do a search for agreement here, notice that before I even run the search, the system is smart. It comes back and it says, well, I see you're searching for the word agreement. That could be a keyword in the full text, but it might also be that you're just looking for it within the title. And if I just tap on the title field, it does exactly that. It searches for the word agreement just within the title field. And if you compare that to the way you might do that in the classic clients, where you bring up a big form, you go to the description field, type it in, hit OK, wait for your results. This is just a much more streamlined way of searching for your documents. Notice
Scott,
also, yes?
2 quick recent questions. One question is, can the support staff see their attorney's recent work?
Yes, they can. They can.
And then does the recent clients provide all the matters for that client?
It does. It does. So when you go to recent clients, and you'll be able to see, all of the matters for that particular client, as long as that client had some work that you did over the past 30 days.
Great. Okay, and just one last question. So what you're showing is browser-based, but it doesn't matter whether they're running on-prem or iManage Cloud?
Nope. Everything that you see here is identical, regardless of whether you're running on premises or in the cloud. It's the same solution that I'm showing you here today.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good questions. So you notice here that my results are personalized. And what that means is that, once again, these documents that have come back belong to clients and matters that I have recently been working on over the last 30 days. The reason we do that is that it keeps results relevant to you. Now, I can still search across the entire system. If I click all here, you'll notice that now I got over 500 results. But personalized is the default. That, again, allows you to tune out the noise and just gives you results that are focused on you based on your activity. Now, maybe I want to get a little more advanced with my search. I happen to remember that this agreement was authored by my colleague, Andrew. So I'll put in Andrew's name. And now you see that the system comes back and it lights up the author field here because it recognizes Andrew as one of our authors. So now it's just prompting me and saying, well, do you want to filter this further by author Andrew? And I say, yes, I do. I click on it. It'll show me if there's multiple people named Andrew. It'll show me their names and even their picture. And then I just select the one I want. And now I'm looking at all documents with the word agreement in the title, authored by Andrew Case, that all belong to clients and matters that I have recently worked on in the last 30 days. And I really didn't have to do anything than use this simple search bar up here at the top. And again, when you compare that with the typical classic DMS experience with the big form where you fill out the fields, this just is a very much more intuitive approach to searching in iManage. So let's go back over here to our main user experience. One of the things you might be asking about is where's my profile information? Where are the versions of these documents? How do I get a preview of the document? If you use iManage today, you're familiar with that in the classic clients. You have it down in the bottom pane. Well, we still have it here in Work 10. We just move it over here to the side. This is what I call elective disclosure. We can show those details when I want to see it, and we can hide them when they don't. It shows exactly those things I just mentioned. So here we've got all those properties. This is the profile information. I can see client, matter, whatever information has been configured on the document profile is all visible right here, and I can modify it right here if I have rights. If a document has multiple versions, like this one right here has 4 versions, I can see those versions listed right here, and I can take action on any of those versions right from here. And then finally, we can preview the document right from here as well. The preview in Work 10 is live, as I like to say. What I mean by that is that I can zoom in, I can scroll through it, I can pan around, I can take it full screen when I want to and see a full screen preview of the document. And once we're in the full screen preview, there's lots of things we can do, including viewing the document timeline. The document timeline that you see right here is a visual history of the document. It's showing me visually everything that's been happening in this document over time. So I can see all the times this document was edited, when it was viewed, I can set the time frame. Maybe I want to see all the times this document was viewed over the last week, and I can see who it was that did it or who emailed that document. This is the same information that we've always captured in the document history in the audit trail, but now in Work 10, we visualize it for you so you can use it to easily validate the document. So that said, what about editing? What if I want to edit this document? Well, couldn't be easier. All I have to do is tap the edit button here. This happens to be a Word document. So that's now going to go ahead and open that document up for editing in Microsoft Office. And here you see now the document opened up right here in Microsoft Word. And once we go ahead and open that up and switch to it here, you see that iManage is fully integrated inside of Work, or I should say, iManage is fully integrated inside of Office. But this is the Work 10 integration. It's a much lighter weight integration that you may be familiar with in the classic clients. It uses the new Work 10 architecture. It's a different type of add-in for Microsoft Office. What that means for you is that it's easier to deploy, easier to maintain, and has better and more consistent performance across the board. Most everything works the same way. If I want to make a change to this document and save that change as a new version, what you see here in Office is the same look and feel as what you saw over there in the browser right here now in Microsoft Word. I can go ahead and put in a comment here on this new version, and just go ahead and save that version right there. And just as I showed you over in the browser, we provide that consistent look and feel across the board. So for example, if I wanted to view the versions of this document from within Word, notice I have the same versions panel, looks the same, works the same as what you saw over in the browser. If I wanted to verify the profile information, for example, I can do that as well. Again, same side panel here inside of Microsoft Office, same functionality as what you saw over in the main browser. I can even go to the timeline and see that same visual history right here from within Microsoft Word. So the theme here is that we are providing not only an updated user experience, but consistent user experience as you cross boundaries from application to application, browser to Office, and so forth.
Scott, a couple of quick
Sure.
questions. One question is, what is the Find Clauses section? I'm assuming that button up there in the top middle.
Well, we're not getting into that today, but that is an interesting question. It ties into RAVN. And what I was talking about there in the beginning of the presentation, what Find Clauses does in this case, this is a conceptual example of one of the things we can do with RAVN, where you can actually highlight a clause inside of Microsoft Word, click Find Clauses, and what it will do is it will then go out and RAVN will find other documents with similar clauses and will actually show you the other clauses that might serve as substitutes or be used to augment the clause that you've selected in Microsoft Word. So it's just it's there as an example of something that a use case for RAVN where we can leverage that during the document editing phase.
Okay, and then a RAVN question. Do the search features you're demoing require RAVN?
No, nothing here requires RAVN. The search here that I'm doing is the exact same search regardless of the search index that you're using.
Okay. Early in the demo, there was a question that said, is the profile information applied through the client folder, through the matter folder?
Yes, of course. And in fact, why don't we go ahead and show that right here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to finalize this document by rendering it to a PDF. And when I do that, I'm using Word's native PDF creation facility. I'm going to save it as a new document so I can show you that exact thing. Now, when I do a save as here, it's bringing up the Work 10 browse dialog. It allows me to browse into any of my matters. I can search throughout my matters. Let's say I'm looking for a specific matter, the Aladdin Corp acquisition. I just did a search for it there. When I browse in and select one of my folders, what that's going to do now is it's automatically going to apply the profile information from that matter workspace and that folder to this document. So I am saving a new document here. It's a PDF that's being created from the Word document. It's going to inherit this client matter information, the status, the practice area, the doc type or class of agreement, That's coming from the agreements folder that I selected. So all of that information is being inherited, including any security information that's been set. So now when I save that, it's creating that PDF, it's filing it into that location in iManage, it's securing it, and it's doing it all automatically just based on the location into which I'm filing it. So if I were to take a step back over here and go into that same Aladdin Corp acquisition, which you see right here, what we'll see inside the agreements folder is indeed that new PDF that I just created. It's got the little lock icon next to it because it's actually open in Adobe right now since it was just created. And if we pop out the details here and we take a look at its properties, you do see that it was classified as an agreement, and that other information that I mentioned, client matter, status, and so forth, has all been applied based on the filing location.
Great, thanks. One or two other quick questions. When previewing a document, do you need a preview server set up in the iManage environment?
You do. So the preview that I did show you there, when I went ahead and clicked on that document, this is utilizing the Work 10 preview server. That is a new component. It's part of Work 10. You get it as part of the product. The advantage of using the preview server is that all the previews are now rendered server-side, as I said. That provides consistent performance across the board. So when I come in here and I start scrolling through this document, for example, you'll notice it's a little hard to see, but what it's really doing is it's loading a few pages at a time and just downloading those or sending those out to the client. It's very different from the way that Classic Preview works. Classic Preview would download the entire document to your local desktop, and then from there you would go ahead and view the document. If it was a 500-page PDF, you had to wait for the whole thing to download. Now with Work 10, we're only downloading a few pages at a time, okay? And so with just a few pages coming down at a time, you get consistent performance regardless of the type of connection, regardless of whether you're using a browser or a mobile phone or whatever the case may be. So the preview server really does provide, a much improved user experience when it comes to previewing.
And a question about PDFs. Are PDF documents OCR'd when they're saved?
So with Work 10 in the cloud, you get OCR as part of your cloud service, and so yes, any image-only PDFs would be fully OCR'd when they go into the cloud. If you're running on premises, you do have the OCR module available as an option to purchase. And you can implement that in your own environment if you have purchased that module.
Okay, sorry, Scott. One or two quick more questions. We only see 8 or 9 documents on the screen. Is there a narrower view that allows us to see more documents before you need to scroll?
When it said 8 or 9 documents on the screen, I'm not quite sure what
I think when you were in the previous screen where you were showing all the documents under a particular matter.
That was all the documents that probably were in that particular folder. You do have the ability to view all documents across the matter if you choose to do so instead of the folder view. But yeah, you can basically see you can get a roll-up view of all documents in the matter just by simply clicking on recent documents within the matter file itself.
Okay, one more question, I'll let you go on. Will Work 10 allow users to save one document to multiple locations?
A single document can only be filed in one location in Work 10. If you file it into another location, it's a copy, and it will have a new document number, and it will have profile information from that second location. The nature of the question, Jim, it may be, do you have the ability to take a document and reference it in other locations? You could do that in the Classic clients. I could take a document that was in one matter, for example, and add it to folders and other matters. It would still have the profile information from the original, but it would be visible as a shortcut in the others. That will be coming, the ability to do that will be coming in 10.3 in the Work 10 UX.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do now, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my PowerPoint here, And I want to talk a little bit about the roadmap and where we're going. Now, you'll notice here, I just talked about where we are today with Work 10.2. First half of this year, which is coming up fairly close, will be our next major release, and we're calling that Mantis. Under the hood, it's iManage Work 10.3, but Mantis is the code name that we use to refer to not only the Work 10.3 release, but everything that orbits around it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we have planned for the second half of this year as well. So first and foremost, one of the things to look forward to in 10.3 is the return of the tree view and the column headings, okay? These are things that you had in the classic clients that notably disappeared in Work 10. With 10.3, you'll now have the option to view a full tree view over on the left-hand side. So in addition to the filter view, you'll now be able to browse through a full tree view, drag and drop between items in the tree view and the main pane and so forth. And then within the main pane, as you see there, you'll have column headings that go across and a full grid view. That means that you can sort on any of the column headings. You'll be able to configure the column headings and so forth. So what this does is it starts to bring parity between the classic user experience and the Work 10 user experience for those users that miss those things when they may have transitioned to Work 10 from the classic clients. Another thing to look forward to as part of the Mantis release is improved synchronization and offline capability. Now, we have offline capability in Work 10 today. I can go into Work 10 and I can take an individual document offline, and as I work on documents, we automatically cache those documents offline, and the offline documents are available in Microsoft Office when I go to open up a document. What we'll be doing in the Mantis release is improving that so that you'll actually now, through our iManage Drive solution, be able to synchronize entire matter files, take everything offline, and have that all tied into the Smart Sync that we already have available. Pardon me. I talked about email management before as well. And we continue our march there as far as enhancements go. For those folks that are using the communication server for Exchange, we'll be adding support for OAuth. This is a big improvement. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, that's okay. This probably isn't relevant to you. Excuse me. But for folks that do know, this is this is actually quite important. OAuth basically now allows you to set up the connectivity between Microsoft Exchange and the work communication server. And OAuth allows you to do that without relying on explicit user IDs and passwords. We'll also be improving the mailbox agent capability to work with client-side filing. Pardon me. The mailbox agent, for those that may be familiar, is something that we've had in the product that allows you to do things like mark emails as filed if they were filed by somebody else. That will make its return into Work 10 to close the gaps there. And then offline email management. I was just talking about the offline capability in Work 10, being able to file while you're offline and have that automatically synchronize, all part of the Mantis release coming up.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah,
I guess related questions about offline is do the NRT Portable and NRT Echo local folders still exist?
Those go away with Work 10, or I should say they evolve in Work 10. We use different locations in Work 10. If you happen to be running the classic clients in what we call compatibility mode with Work 10, we update the classic clients to utilize the new locations with Work 10, which are actually based on the user's local profile as opposed to the previous, NRT Portable and NRT Echo folders.
Got it.
It's
Thanks.
the same idea, though.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. Some of the other things that you'll be seeing, I don't know how many folks might be utilizing some of our mobility solutions. Mobility is a key theme in iManage Work 10, the ability to not only access the system through a mobile web browser, but also through our iOS app. And for anybody that has looked at our iOS app or is utilizing that, we'll be doing some interesting things with PDF annotation, the ability to natively annotate PDFs right within the mobile device, and go ahead and save that back into iManage. Also, full integration with Microsoft Intune. Typically, we've tried to get out of the business of building specific versions of our mobility solution for specific MDM platforms. iOS has kind of leveled the playing field through what's called their managed app APIs. However, Microsoft being Microsoft and Apple being Apple, there still is, a need to have a dedicated version of the app for Microsoft Intune, particularly for people using Microsoft Office or Office 365 for iOS. So we are, as part of the next Mantis release, including Microsoft Intune integration, if that's something that is of particular interest to you. Okay.
Hey, Scott, is the grid view going to be available in the mobile app? So I guess 10.3 grid view.
That's a very good question. Typically, well, there's the mobile app and then there's the mobile web experience. Things like the grid view and the tree view, I don't anticipate seeing those initially in the mobile version of the web app. The reason being is because the mobile version of the app has to be fully responsive, and building in the responsiveness to accommodate a full tree as well as a grid view is a bit of a challenge. What we're doing is we'll be introducing that in the full browser version first. You won't see those in the mobile app, but then we will continue to work to look at ways that we can bring that functionality into the mobile web app as well. But that would be a follow-on release down the road.
Got it. And what multi-factor authentication does mobility support?
Pretty much, so mobility, if you're talking about iOS mobility specifically, it's really dependent on what's configured on the Work 10 server. We support pretty much any SAML 2.0 based, identity provider. Multi-factor is just a function of your identity provider. So for example, we use Duo at iManage. It's not anything specific to the work server. It's just simply that the work server has been configured for Duo. And then once you get passed over to the Duo identity provider to authenticate and get your token, it happens to have a two-factor module set up with it. So I get a notification on my phone or even on my Apple Watch that I need to click a button to approve it. And then it sets the token and sends that back to iManage. So the short answer is, pretty much any SAML 2.0 identity provider that has MFA capability is going to work with mobility through Work 10.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So iManage Drive. iManage Drive is a big step for us. It's part of the offline capability that I mentioned before. The screenshot here that I have, I don't think really does it justice. What I'll do is I'll switch back over to my demo real quick and show you actually what it looks like. But Drive is essentially a desktop synchronization that allows you now to synchronize entire matter files directly down to your local hard drive. Now, for those of you that may be longtime iManage users, you may be familiar with Offsite, which did something very similar. But Offsite still required a local database, and everything had to be done through iManage. This is synchronizing natively to your local file system. It works on both Windows and Mac, and it provides instant integration with any application because everything is synchronized simply to the local file system. So Switching back over to my demonstration here, I'm just showing you real quickly what this looks like. You notice right here in my Windows Explorer, I have the iManage drive mapped, and you see a list of Windows folders here, which are actually my iManage folders. These are the exact same list of active matters. If we switch back over and go to my recent matters here, I'm actually looking at the same list of matters here inside of Work 10 as I was seeing right here inside of iManage Drive. If I click into one of these, it's just like browsing any Windows file folder. I can go in here, and now the only difference is you notice that some of these documents have a little cloud icon over it. That's an indicator that we've downloaded essentially the, for lack of a better term, the header information for the file, but we haven't actually downloaded the entire document. If I decided I needed everything, let's say in this attorney notes folder, I could just simply come over here and say download sync to go drive. And that would automatically download all that information. And now in just a few minutes, I'll have, all those documents available now with a little green check mark. If I were to double click one of these here, it's going to go ahead and open that, that document up. We're supposed to open that document up. I think it's still downloading right now. But what it would do is even if I hadn't downloaded it, it would download it on the fly, open up the document, and then it would be available. And similarly, if at some point I want to eliminate the files from my local machine and just have the reference, I can select View on iManage Work, and that'll essentially clear the documents locally and push them back up into iManage. So this is a great solution for users that are looking for easy integration with iManage from touch points that typically aren't integrated. Think of an e-filing site. From your web browser, you can now browse right into iManage and file a document. Also, if you're using OLE linking in spreadsheets or in Office documents, this provides a really nice, clean, native way to link documents together right here through the normal linking in iManage without having to require any kind of additional upload and linking steps as you may have experienced previously. So iManage Drive is a pretty it's a pretty exciting development for us, and we're really looking forward to that as part of the Mantis release.
Hey Scott, if someone adds a document to a workspace after you've downloaded that workspace, does it then download automatically?
It will. It will. The synchronization function in iManage Drive will automatically pick up. There's been a change, and it will automatically update. So the synchronization is happening all the time in the background. I shouldn't say all the time, but it's running consistently in the background to keep your local your local repository up to date. Based on what's in work.
One more question: would an administrator be able to tell what an attorney had downloaded or synced?
Yes, good question. So all of that information is all being captured inside of the history. Also, the iManage Threat Manager product, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit, has the ability to actually track and report on user activity where iManage Drive has been part of that. So yes, an administrator has full visibility on what people have done with Drive.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about excuse me, where we're going later in the year. So looking forward to the end of 2019, early 2020, here's some of the key themes that we have planned. Better and deeper, I should say, integration with Microsoft Office. Think about Microsoft Office Online, the ability to actually see iManage as a cloud provider. Full integration with the G Suite, with Google. Think Google Docs, and so forth. Also, one of the things I'm excited about is tagging and collections. This is the idea of being able to do ad hoc tagging on documents and different content, and then collect things together based on those tags. So the ability to create, think of it almost like a virtual workspace that you can then go ahead and do something with. And then from a security and governance standpoint, integration or extension to digital rights management and data loss prevention, DRM and DLP. If I have a document, for example, that should be secured only to a particular group in iManage, I may not want somebody to be able to email that document out. Today, if I export it from iManage, there's no way to control that. Our extension to include, security policies to go beyond iManage through DRM is one of the things that we're looking at there. So along those lines, in the last 15 minutes that we have here, let's talk a little bit about our security products, Security Policy Manager and Threat Manager. So Security Policy Manager really does two things. It provides need-to-know security as well as ethical walls. Now, many of you may be running an ethical wall product today. It allows you to go ahead and set up conflicts and enforce walls for people that have ethical or business conflicts. Security Policy Manager does that, and it does it by allowing you to set up this need-to-know security. It kind of turns security on its head, if you will. And what I mean by that is that when we talk to a lot of iManage customers, we find that a lot of times in excess of 70% of all their documents are in the system as public. They're not secured. And we say, well, why is that? Why don't you secure everything? And they say, well, it's just too hard. We only secure the things that we absolutely have to because of client mandates. Security Policy Manager makes it easy for you to enforce that need-to-know security. And it does it through things like complete self-service, the ability for an end user to easily request access to something, or to even have access granted automatically for 24 hours. Also gives you full visibility into the matter teams and the client teams that have been set up, and any ethical walls that are set up based on individual conflicts or team conflicts. And the nice thing about Policy Manager is that it has agents that connect not only to iManage work, but other systems like iManage Records Manager, Windows File Shares, time and entry systems, and so forth. One of the key advantages of Security Policy Manager over other ethical wall products is that security can be applied, a conflict, for example, or a security screen can be applied automatically and instantly. It doesn't have to cascade through all of the ACLs. SPM is basically a security overlay over the ACLs that you have currently. The work server is SPM aware. That means that the DMS now knows to go check the SPM security before it gives somebody access to it. Current ethical wall products, third-party products, have to modify the ACLs on every single object in iManage in order to enforce the wall. So if you have a big matter or a big client with lots of matters where you have to enforce a conflict, it could literally take hours or even days for all those security changes to propagate through and get indexed. SPM doesn't have to do that. So it really is, from an architectural standpoint and technical standpoint, a pretty superior solution in that regard. The security in SPM, again, is policy-based, and it really is based on clients and matters. So I can apply a security policy manager or a security policy to an entire client. I can do it on a matter-by-matter basis. I can even apply it to the entire client, and then have that apply to all matters, but then have individual or specific security policies on certain matters within that particular client. Again, it's really helped, or it's really designed to help people respond, or firms respond to that "why don't I have access?" question. That's one of the key reasons why firms today don't apply security across the board, because some attorney needs access to a document, they can't see it, they don't know why. With SPM, you actually have an end user console where users can see in real time what it is that they have access to, and they can easily request access to things that they don't. So we give the users the ability not only to have full transparency and visibility into what they have access to, but to be self-service as far as requesting access to content, which really goes a long way in improving the cost of ownership. Now let's talk a little bit about Threat Manager, shifting gears. I'm still talking about security and governance, but Threat Manager solves a different problem. It's an active threat detection solution. It solves the problem where we say, okay, with SPM, we've now locked everything down so that we're not exposed. But what if we have a bad actor that's already internal to our environment? What if somebody's account credentials have fallen prey to a phishing attack and someone is now in the system with valid credentials? Or what if we just have a rogue actor within our organization, somebody who's planning on leaving the firm, a disgruntled employee? How do we detect when someone is in doing things that they shouldn't and accessing content that they shouldn't? There's a lot of solutions out in the market today that do this type of thing, that can watch for things in your environment, but they're all threshold based. They're not application aware. And you end up with a lot of false positives. The difference with iManage Threat Manager is it's designed specifically for iManage, and it understands iManage content, iManage users, and how those users act. So it really is a specialized solution to solve this problem within the context of iManage. What it can do is it can help detect, insider situations, like I said, disgruntled employees, malicious activity. Sometimes you just want to keep an eye on privileged accounts. Nothing suspicious is going on, but you just need to be aware of what people with, high-level privileges are doing within the system. Even unintentional risk exposure. You might have a lower-level employee who has an enormous amount of access because their job requires it. You want to keep an eye on what it is they're doing so that you can step in if something happens that even they're not aware of. Also helps with those external situations, stolen credentials, phishing attacks, where someone's credentials end up in the hands of somebody that they shouldn't. Social engineering is still a big problem, where we end up giving up credentials without realizing it. And also an interesting use case, and a very common one, and one that we hear more and more, is departures. If you've just got somebody who's planning on leaving the firm, even if whether they have or haven't given notice, what we found is that the algorithms we use in Threat Manager are incredibly good at detecting, based on activity, when someone is planning on leaving the firm, just based on what they're doing and what they're accessing and how that compares to their normal activity. So the way Threat Manager works is it goes through your system and your iManage work system, and it builds essentially, think of it sort of like a data warehouse, to use an old term. It takes the historical data in your history tables and your system and sort of digests it down, and it builds a picture based on that of all the different users in your organization, the groups that they're in, and what their typical behavior is, and it can kind of build models and say, okay, the typical user in the IP practice group generally accesses, this many documents across this many matters. They do this many document edits, this many downloads, this many emails, and so forth. And it starts to build, these profiles based on that kind of activity. What this does is it goes beyond threshold-based monitoring, because now it really starts to get an understanding of how users work. So when somebody downloads, documents that go beyond what they normally do, it's not just comparing that to a threshold, but it can actually compare that not only to what it's come up with, but are there any other instances where this person has maybe downloaded this many documents, maybe at a certain time of the year? How does this also compare to their cohort group, everybody else in their practice group? How does that compare? And it can put all these numbers together to come up with a threat score, and then go ahead and offer you a report that shows you what the threats are and where they're coming from. Okay. So that finishes off for SPM and Threat Manager. I did mention that we might have time to talk a little bit about RAVN. It looks like we've got about 7 minutes left. Jim, I'm happy to take some questions now, or I can move on and talk a little bit about RAVN if you think there's value in doing that. I'll kind of leave that up.
Yeah, quick question about the release date for 10.3. I think one or two people asked, when is 10.3 coming out?
So again, we're targeting first half. So think the June timeframe. So I would put it, towards the end of June in this year.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, please go ahead with RAVN.
Okay. So, so what is iManage RAVN? Some of you have probably heard about RAVN. Before I even go down this road, though, I want to make sure that I clarify a few things for folks. There's two aspects to RAVN that you may have heard about. One is the RAVN indexer for iManage work. The other is the iManage RAVN solution and all of the great artificial intelligent things it can do. Those are really two different things. They're very closely related, but they're two different things and they have very different meaning for customers. So first off, the RAVN indexer, what is that? Well, in a nutshell, the RAVN indexer is a replacement for the idle indexer. It is a pin-for-pin replacement. It does exactly what your idle indexer does today. You have the option to swap out the idle indexer for the RAVN indexer. It does not give you any new functionality. It is identical to the idle indexer. You and your end users will notice no difference in iManage, whether you're using the RAVN indexer or the idle indexer, and that is by design. What it does do is it sets you up to start to take advantage of all of those great AI things that are part of the broader RAVN platform. Once you have the RAVN indexer in place, now you can start to look at applying additional RAVN functionality if you have the other RAVN components based on what you've built with the RAVN indexer. And that's where these three things that I have laid out here are. Classification. That's a broad use case where we can automatically classify documents based on information in those documents and training sets. Extract. Extraction is the ability, once we've classified a document, let's say we've identified a set of documents as employment agreements, now we can extract things like employee names, we can extract salary information and so forth. And then there's insight. Insight is enterprise search. It's the ability to index not only iManage work, but other sources as well. Go ahead and search against those sources and then even bring in elements from classify and extract as part of that to augment what those search results look like. So across the board, that's what the RAVN platform looks like, and that's how it ties into the RAVN indexer. I won't spend a lot of time on a lot of these slides, but suffice it to say that when we get into the AI components, the focus here really is on understanding the information. And, there's really three key areas to that. First off, filtering through and understanding the different types of information, being able to extract key terms and things from that data, and then allowing you to do an analysis and act on that based on what RAVN has turned up. Okay. Some of the key things about RAVN AI, it's self-training. So out of the box, we can provide custom extractors. We have an API that's extensible, but it does have the ability right out of the box to start to do some of its own self-training. It is integrated, again, with iManage applications. So again, as I mentioned, with the RAVN indexer in place, that's sort of your first step to being able to leverage the RAVN components. And looking at some of the solutions specifically that we've targeted around RAVN, document reviews. If you're going through a merger and acquisition, think of all the due diligence you have to do. Repeatable work. This is things where it's very repetitive. You're reviewing the same types of documents, hundreds or even thousands of documents. It's a key use case for RAVN classification. Time card narrative classification. Again, applying this specifically to the narrative field in your time and billing system to be able to classify based on what attorneys have input, classify that information in the context of matters that they've been working on. And then one of the things that we touched on briefly due to the question that was asked during the demo, clause library and knowledge management around document clauses. Being able to click a button and say, find me more documents that have a clause similar to this. That's another great use case for the RAVN solution. So I won't spend a lot of time here, but when we look at things like classification, again, there's always a business driver, you know, behind some sort of classification. Different groups and organizations, whether it's law firms or corporate legal departments, always have different use cases where classification is you know, a big part of what we do, sifting things out, putting them in different piles. So with RAVN, you know, first is, you know, selecting a key representative set of documents as your training set, feeding that into RAVN, and then allowing the auto classification to take place and tuning that process as you go. That's the high level process that we go through with the document classifier. Okay.
Hey, Scott, can I squeeze in 2 questions with?
Yeah, I was going to say, Jim, I'm gonna stop right there. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. We made it through the RAVN stuff, so again, I'm happy to answer whatever questions are still out there.
Yeah, question about RAVN. So if RAVN's identical to the end user, is it also identical on the idle server complexity?
Very good question. We have just as with idle, we have a server sizing team specifically for RAVN. The short answer is RAVN uses less resources, but that doesn't mean that you can run out and, you know, start dumping a bunch of your servers. You still want to go through the same sizing exercise with our iManage support team that you would for idle. What you will find is that the recommendations will require less resources, just because the nature of the architecture is different. It has less components and it's less resource intensive. But again, you know, you certainly can run RAVN on your current idle infrastructure, but it's a bit apples and oranges, because the way that the infrastructure may have been sized based on the idle components, things like content engines and things like that, some of that just doesn't translate over to RAVN. It doesn't have the same concept of content engines and things like that. So the recommendation is you go through our sizing team. They will go ahead and put together a sizing recommendation. It will be less than what you're using for idle, and you should be able to reuse some of those or repurpose some of those components if you want to. My recommendation is, if you're standing up RAVN, don't take idle offline, leave idle running, build out RAVN separately, do the swap out, do your testing, and don't turn off idle until you're pretty far down the road and confident that you're ready to move to RAVN. That's always my recommendation.
Got it. And last question, I think this relates to the Elegrity acquisition. Is there any news on the availability of Conflicts Manager?
I don't, well, Conflicts Manager is available today. So if you're interested in Conflicts Manager, by all means, reach out to your iManage account executive. They'd be happy to schedule a demo with you. That product is available. And so, you know, yeah, I don't have any other updated information around changes or anything like that. But as far as its availability, it is available now.
Got it. Okay. Marcia, did you want to wrap it up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim and Scott, for the great presentation, and Cornerstone for sponsoring. And to our members, the evaluations are now available, so please take a few moments to complete it. And thanks everyone for attending today's ILTA webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Great, thank you. And if we didn't get around to answering your questions, we'll try and get to them after this call. If not, feel free to reach out to Scott or myself directly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.